When a 12-year-old boy said his mom owned the bank, the teller laughed in his face and humiliated him in front of everyone, until the woman they were mocking walked out of her upstairs office. Damian Tucker wasn't the kind of kid who liked running errands. At 12, he'd much rather be at the park near his school in Macon, Georgia, tossing a football or watching videos on his cracked tablet. But when his mom asked him to take something to the bank for her after school, he didn't question it. That's just how things worked in their house. When Monica Tucker asked, you didn't argue. You listened. He stood in front of the hallway mirror, smoothing out his hoodie. His jeans were a little too long, bunching around his sneakers, and there was still a streak of dirt on the side from lunchtime kickball. He wiped at it half-heartedly, then gave up and shrugged. Whatever. He had the manila envelope and the deposit slip. That was what mattered. Straight there and straight back, Monica said from the kitchen, her voice firm but warm. Don't let anyone talk you into stopping for chips or soda. I won't, Damian replied, zipping his hoodie up. You trust me, right? I do. That's why I'm sending you, she said, walking over and handing him the documents. Her dark blue blazer was still on from a long day at work, and her heels clicked softly on the hardwood floor. She looked tired, but her eyes were alert, always watching, always sharp. Damian looked up at her. Do I tell them I'm your son? Monica hesitated for a beat. Only if they ask, she said. Just hand it over at the front desk. If they need anything else, tell them to check with the office. He nodded. Okay. And Damian, she added, crouching slightly so they were eye to eye. Don't let anyone make you feel small in that building. You hear me? He gave her a crooked smile. They won't. The walk to Harper and West Bank took about 12 minutes. The sun was starting to dip low, casting long shadows on the sidewalk, and traffic was picking up on Houston Avenue. Damian kept one hand in his hoodie pocket and the other gripping the envelope tight like it was worth $1 million. As he approached the bank, he paused at the crosswalk and watched the building from across the street. It didn't look like anything special. Red brick, silver signage, big tinted windows. But he knew what it really was. It was his mom's. Not just where she worked. She owned it. Full stop. That was the part most people didn't believe. He'd seen it happen before. When she introduced herself in meetings or signed papers in front of strangers, there was often a double take, as if they were looking for someone behind her, someone older, or maybe lighter-skinned, or a man. Never her. Never Monica Tucker, a black woman from Augusta with a voice that didn't rise and a face that didn't flinch. Inside the bank, the air was cool and smelled faintly like printer toner and cologne. Damian got in line behind a man in a plaid shirt and khakis. There were 3 tellers behind the counter, 1 older man and 2 women. The one at the far end looked like she was counting bills. The one in the middle was tapping her nails on the counter. The third one, closest to him, was talking with a customer and glancing up every few seconds like she wanted the line to disappear. Damian shifted from foot to foot. He clutched the envelope tighter, replaying his mom's instructions in his head. When the guy in front of him stepped away, it was his turn. Next! The teller called, not even looking up. He walked up slowly and placed the envelope and slip on the counter. Hi, I'm here on behalf of my mom, Monica Tucker. She asked me to bring this in for her. The teller, who wore a name tag that said Candace, finally looked at him, then blinked. Her mouth twitched. I'm sorry, what? I said I'm here for my mom, Damian repeated, his voice steady. She owns this bank. Candace's face did something weird, like it was trying to decide between laughing and looking confused. Then she let out a quick, sharp laugh. Oh, really? She said. And I'm Beyoncé. Damian blinked. He could feel his ears getting hot, but he didn't say anything. He just kept standing there, like his feet were glued to the ground. But before he could respond, things were about to get worse, because Candace wasn't done. Candace didn't just laugh. She leaned back in her chair and looked over at the other teller to her right, tilting her head in mock disbelief. Y'all hear this? She said loudly. This kid says his mom owns the bank. The woman next to her didn't say anything, but Damian could tell she heard. Her fingers paused on the keyboard. So did a few customers behind him. He could feel their eyes on the back of his neck. And in that moment, the calm he'd been holding on to started slipping. "I'm not lying," he said quietly, keeping his chin up. "Her name's Monica Tucker. You can check." Candace tilted her head and gave him a long, drawn-out look. "You got ID or something? Bank paperwork from your mom?" Damian held up the envelope again. "She just asked me to drop this off." "That's it." Candace looked at the envelope, then back at him. "And she just sends you up here, all by yourself? Walking around saying she owns the place?" Damian tried not to let it show, but his fists clenched. He hated the way she said "you." Like he wasn't supposed to be standing there at all. Like kids like him didn't belong in places like this. He took a deep breath. "She told me to give it to the front desk." "That's what I'm doing." Candace snorted. "Sure she did." She looked around theatrically, then leaned in with a smug smile. "Is she the cleaning lady, sweetheart? Maybe you got your wires crossed." Someone in line chuckled. Damian turned slightly and caught a man in a blue windbreaker shaking his head with a smirk. His stomach twisted, and for a second he thought about walking out, just leaving the envelope and going home. But he didn't. He lifted his chin again. "No, she owns this building. Her office is upstairs." Candace leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. "Well, then maybe she can come down here and explain it herself, The silence that followed was sharp. No one spoke. The keys on the teller's keyboard had stopped clicking. Even the man in the windbreaker looked uncomfortable now. Damian didn't move. His mouth was dry, but his eyes stayed fixed on hers. "I'm just doing what she asked me to do," he said, his voice steady despite the heat in his cheeks. "You can call her office if you don't believe me." Candace looked like she was about to say something else, something worse, but she didn't get the chance. A door behind the counter opened with a soft click, the one with the frosted glass panel that led to the executive offices upstairs. Out stepped Monica Tucker. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't ask for attention. She didn't need to. In that moment, everything shifted. Monica's heels clicked softly against the tile as she walked toward the counter. She wasn't smiling, but her expression wasn't angry either. Just composed. Like someone who'd been through this scene more than once and didn't need to explain herself to anyone. "Hi, baby," she said, resting a hand gently on Damian's shoulder. Damian exhaled. He didn't even realize he'd been holding his breath. Monica turned to Candace. "Is there a problem with my son delivering my documents?" Candace's mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes flicked to the name tag on Monica's blazer, the small silver one that said Monica Tucker, founder and president, and her face drained of color. I didn't realize," she began, but Monica cut her off with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You didn't realize what?" Candace stammered. "I thought maybe he was confused. You know, people say things and I wasn't sure, so instead of asking or checking, you assumed." Monica didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. The people in line had gone quiet. One of them stepped back slightly, giving Monica a clear path to the counter. Candace looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. Damian stood up a little straighter, but the moment of reckoning wasn't over yet, because Monica wasn't finished. Monica stepped closer to the counter, her eyes locked on Candace's. There was no yelling, no dramatic pause, just a silence that seemed to press down on the room, making even the hum of the ceiling lights feel loud. Candace fidgeted. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, her face caught somewhere between embarrassment and defensiveness. "Look, I didn't mean anything by it," she offered, almost in a whisper. Monica tilted her head slightly. "Didn't mean anything by what?" Candace opened her mouth, then hesitated. I just thought he was that's all." "Confused?" Monica repeated, her voice flat. Damian looked up at his mother. She hadn't raised her voice once, but the tension in the room was heavier than it had ever been. Even the man in the windbreaker had lowered his eyes and stepped to the side, pretending to look at his phone. "I gave him instructions to drop off confidential documents and a signed deposit slip," Monica continued. "He did exactly what I asked. And for that, he was laughed at, questioned, and humiliated in front of a line of strangers." There was a pause. Then Monica added, "Is that your policy here?" "No, Mom," a voice came from the hallway. Everyone turned. A man in a light grey suit with a deep crease in his forehead was walking toward the front counter. His name tag read, Stephen Albright, branch manager. He looked like he'd just emerged from a tornado, probably summoned by the tension seeping through the lobby. "I apologize, Mrs. Tucker," he said quickly. "I just stepped out for a call. I didn't realize what was going on here." "Well, now you do," Monica replied calmly. Stephen's eyes darted toward Candace, who seemed frozen in place. "I'll handle this immediately," he said, voice tight. "Candace, can I speak with you in the office?" Candace hesitated. "But now!" The word landed like a dropped weight. Candace gave Monica a stiff nod, more like a flinch, then disappeared with the manager down the hallway. Monica turned back to Damian. Her hand rested lightly on his back. "You okay?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Good." She looked back at the people in line, some of whom still hadn't moved. "Anyone else need help?" There were a few coughs, a shuffling of feet. The mood in the room had shifted completely. What had started as a simple errand now felt like a lesson being taught in real time, one that had nothing to do with deposits or banking. A woman a few spots back stepped forward. She looked to be in her 50s, with a short brown bob and a floral purse. Her voice was quiet. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry," she said to Monica, but glanced at Damian too. "That shouldn't have happened." Monica gave a small nod. "Thank you. I got kids," the woman added, almost under her breath. "They shouldn't have to prove who they are every time they walk into a room." Monica didn't respond right away. She just looked at Damian and said, "Let's go." They walked out side by side. Damian didn't say much until they hit the sidewalk again. The sun was almost down, and traffic had picked up. He could hear the buzz of cars and the faint sound of a basketball bouncing down the block. "Does that happen to you a lot?" he asked. Monica kept walking for a few seconds before answering. "More than I'd like." Damian kicked a loose pebble down the sidewalk. "So, what happens now? Is she going to get fired?" "That's not up to me," Monica said. "I reported it. What the bank decides to do after that is their decision." "But she laughed at me," Damian said, his voice rising a little. "She called you the cleaning lady. She made everyone look at me like I was lying." "I know," Monica said. "And she'll have to sit with that, just like everyone who stood by and let it happen." They stopped at the crosswalk. "Listen," she said, turning toward him. "You handled yourself better than most adults would have. You didn't yell. You didn't storm off. You told the truth and stood your ground. That means something." Damian looked down. "Felt like I did nothing. You did exactly what I asked. And more." She smiled gently. "I'm proud of you." But even though they were walking away from the bank, the conversation was far from over, because Damian had more questions. They crossed the street, the signal blinking red just as they reached the sidewalk. Damian didn't say anything for a block. He just walked, hands deep in his pockets, shoes scuffing the pavement. Monica let him think. Then, finally, "Do you think she'll do that to other kids?" Monica glanced down at him. "Probably." "But why? You saw me. I wasn't being rude. I just told her who I was." "It's not always about what you do," Monica said. "Sometimes people walk around with ideas already in their heads. Doesn't matter what you say. Doesn't matter what you wear. Doesn't even matter how polite you are." Damian frowned. "So what's the point?" She paused before answering. "The point is, you don't change who you are just to make those people comfortable." They reached a quiet corner near a bakery that had closed for the day. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon and motor oil. Monica stopped, leaned against the railing in front of the shop, and looked out over the small parking lot. "You remember last year?" she said, "when I got that award from the Georgia Women in Business Group?" "Yeah," Damian replied. "You wore that red suit and made a speech." "I got there early, wasn't wearing the name tag yet. Went to the check-in table and the woman behind it asked if I was someone's assistant. Said she could seat me near the back so I wouldn't get in the way." Damian's eyes widened. "What?" Monica nodded. "I didn't get mad. I just told her I was the keynote speaker and kept walking." "Did she apologize?" "Eventually. But it wasn't about the apology. It was about her realizing she'd made the wrong assumption and I didn't need to shout to make my point. Damian looked down at his sneakers. They were still dusty, still scuffed, still his. So you just stay calm, not always calm, she said, but always clear. He nodded slowly, still trying to process. That lady in the bank looked like she saw a ghost when you walked out. She saw something she didn't expect. That's all. They stood there a minute longer before Monica pushed off from the railing. Let's get home. I've got leftovers and a headache. As they turned the corner, Damian asked, Are you going to tell Grandma? Monica smirked. Lord, no. Your grandma would have come down there with a church fan and a witness. He laughed. First real laugh since he walked into that bank. Later that evening, Damian sat at the kitchen table, pushing green beans around on his plate while Monica took a call in the other room. Her voice was low, serious. He couldn't hear much, but every now and then he caught a word. Training, incident, follow-up. When she returned, she looked more tired than before. Was that about the bank? Monica nodded as she sat across from him. They'll be reviewing it. HR will handle the next steps. Will they fire her? I don't know. That's not my job. My job was to report what happened, and to make sure you were okay. He poked at his food again. I was kinda mad, he admitted. That's okay. It's okay to feel mad, but don't let it live in you. You understand? He nodded, though he wasn't sure he did. Monica reached over and tapped the manila envelope that now sat on the counter. You did exactly what I asked. You followed through. You held your head up. That's something not everyone knows how to do, especially when people are trying to tear them down. He looked at her. Were you ever scared? Plenty of times, she said. But fear doesn't mean you stop moving. It just means you keep moving carefully. But even as Monica tried to move past the day, the situation at the bank wasn't finished, because consequences were already in motion behind closed doors. The next morning, Damian woke up earlier than usual. He didn't know why. Maybe it was the weight of yesterday still lingering in his chest. The envelope was gone from the counter. So was Monica. She'd left a note like she always did when she had early meetings. Eggs in the fridge. Be good. Love you. Mom. He sat at the table with a bowl of cereal, the spoon clinking against the sides. The house was quiet except for the creaks of pipes and the hum of the fridge. His mind kept going back to the way Candace laughed, how the man in line snickered, and the way his mom didn't even blink when she stepped in. At school, he barely heard what the math teacher was saying. During lunch, he sat with his best friend, Jaden, but even the usual trash-talking over cafeteria pizza didn't hit the same. You good? Jaden asked, nudging his tray forward. Damian shrugged. Went to the bank for my mom yesterday. Lady behind the counter laughed in my face. Jaden stopped chewing. What? Why? Said she didn't believe my mom owned it, thought she was the cleaning lady or something. No way, Jaden said, his voice rising. What did you do? I told her again. Then my mom came out, shut it down without yelling once. Jaden whistled. Yo, I wish I'd seen that. Yeah, Damian said, but his voice was low. Still felt bad, though. Like, even after she saw my mom, I could tell she didn't respect her. Like she was embarrassed, not sorry. After school, Damian walked instead of catching the bus. He needed air. When he got home, Monica was just pulling into the driveway. She stepped out in flats, her heels swapped for comfort, her blazer folded over her arm. Got a minute? She asked, nodding toward the porch. They sat on the wooden steps, the sun sinking behind the trees, painting everything gold. Damian didn't speak right away. Monica waited. Why do people do that? He finally asked. Why assume stuff? Because it's easier than thinking, she said. People walk around with a picture in their heads of what they think success looks like. And when someone doesn't match that picture, they assume it's a mistake. He stared ahead. Feels like they don't see me unless I'm proving something. That's the trap, she said. You get caught spending all your time trying to prove you're enough. But you already are. He nodded slowly. You were brave yesterday. She added. You didn't yell, didn't insult her, didn't storm out. That takes strength most grown folks don't even have. I felt like I was just standing there, he said. Sometimes standing still is the bravest thing you can do." Damian looked over at her. "You ever feel tired? Like, just tired of people thinking you're less?" Monica took a deep breath. "Every week. But I don't carry it all the time. I put it down when I walk through this door. That's how I stay whole." He leaned back against the railing. "Is it going to be like this forever?" he asked. "No," she said. "But it'll take people like you growing up, asking these questions, and making different choices. That's how it changes. Slowly. One room at a time." Damian thought about that. "What if I mess up?" "Then you try again. Being right all the time isn't what makes you strong. Getting back up is." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Monica added, "You know, there's going to be other people like her. People who'll talk down to you, laugh, question everything about you. But you don't have to carry their ignorance." Damian looked at her. "You're not going to stop going to that bank?" "I own that bank," she said. "Why would I leave?" He smiled. Just a little. But it felt good. But while they were having that quiet talk on the porch, a very different kind of conversation was happening back at the bank, one that would bring everything full circle. Back at Harper and West Bank, the atmosphere behind the scenes wasn't nearly as calm. Inside a glass-walled conference room on the second floor, the blinds were half closed, and 3 people sat around a small oval table. Monica didn't say much at first. She let the HR director speak, her arms crossed, expression unreadable. Candace sat on the opposite side of the table, posture stiff, hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked different today. Hair pulled back. No eyeliner. More muted. More cautious. Her eyes stayed low, flicking occasionally toward the glass as if wishing she could vanish through it. "I want to be clear," said Teresa Ung, the bank's director of human resources. "This is a formal review. What happened at the front counter yesterday was a breach of protocol and falls under conduct unbecoming of a representative of this institution." Candace opened her mouth, but Monica raised a hand slightly. Not aggressive, just a motion that said, "Let her finish." "We've received 3 written statements from customers who witnessed the exchange," Teresa continued. "All 3 confirm that you mocked a minor, made a derogatory implication about his mother's profession, and refused to verify his information despite being presented with documentation." "I was caught off guard," Candace finally said. "I didn't mean—" Monica spoke for the first time. "You didn't mean for anyone to hear, or you didn't mean to say it." Candace looked up at her. "I didn't think he was telling the truth. That much was clear?" Monica replied. Her tone wasn't angry. It was tired. There was a pause. Teresa looked between them, then nodded slowly. "You're being placed on administrative leave, effective immediately. Further decisions will be made pending internal review." Candace stood up abruptly, then hesitated. "Mrs. Tucker," she said, her voice low. "I'm sorry. Truly. I wasn't trying to cause harm." Monica looked at her, then down at her own folded hands. "People don't always try to cause harm. They just stop seeing the person in front of them." Candace didn't reply. She walked out of the room quietly, shoulders tight. After she left, Teresa looked over. "I appreciate how you handled it, Monica. You kept it from becoming a PR nightmare." "I didn't do it for PR," Monica said. "I did it because that was my son." Later that evening, Damian sat at the kitchen counter while Monica chopped bell peppers for dinner. He was scrolling through his phone when it buzzed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. "Hey," he said. "Did you give my number to Ms. Teresa from the bank?" "I did. Why?" "She just messaged me. Asked if I'd be open to speaking to the staff next month. Some kind of equity training thing." Monica paused mid-chop. "You don't have to do it." "I kind of want to," he said after a moment. "I mean, maybe if they hear it from someone like me, they'll stop treating other kids like that." Monica smiled to herself, then went back to cutting peppers. "You're thinking bigger already." Damian grinned. "Don't get used to it." She laughed. The next few days passed quietly. No more texts, no more follow-up meetings. Monica didn't speak of the incident again unless Damian brought it up, which he did less and less. It didn't disappear, but it didn't sit heavy on him anymore either. A week later, he walked into the same bank. this time with Monica beside him. They needed to drop off a revised contract for a new business partner. The lobby looked the same, but the tension was gone. Different teller today. Young guy. Smiled when he saw them, asked how their day was going. Damian placed the folder on the counter and said, "Delivery for Ms. Tucker." The teller looked up, then gave him a nod. "Got it. You must be her assistant." "No," Damian said, calm and confident. "I'm her son." The teller blinked, then smiled. "Cool. You want a receipt for her, or she got it covered?" "She's got it," Damian said. They walked out together. Monica didn't say a word. She didn't have to. But as the door swung shut behind them, Damian felt something different. Like for the first time, he didn't have to prove anything at all. It was a warm Saturday in early spring when Damian returned to the bank again, this time by choice, and this time alone. Monica had mentioned needing to pick up a binder from her office, but she'd been swamped on calls all morning, so he offered to swing by and grab it for her. There was no hesitation in his step as he approached the building. No second-guessing like before. The last visit had left a mark, not the kind that stings, but the kind that makes you sharper, clearer. He opened the glass door and stepped into the lobby with ease. Inside, the place felt lighter. It wasn't quieter or emptier. The phones still rang, the printers still hummed, but the weight that once hung in the air was gone. He walked up to the front desk. A new receptionist greeted him, an older woman with short hair and reading glasses. "Hi there, can I help you?" "I'm here for Monica Tucker," he said clearly. "I'm her son. She left a binder upstairs." The receptionist smiled warmly, without a hint of doubt. "Of course, Damian, right?" He blinked. "Yeah." "She told me you might come by. I'll have someone bring it down." As she turned to pick up the phone, Damian noticed a small flyer taped to the desk's edge. Community Voices Workshop. Special guest, Damian Tucker. The words were printed in bold above a grainy photo of him standing next to his mom at a ribbon cutting last year. He chuckled under his breath. "Really, Mom?" he muttered. The receptionist overheard and smiled. "She brags about you a lot." He rolled his eyes playfully, but felt a strange warmth in his chest. A couple minutes later, an assistant came down with the binder, tucked neatly in a red folder. As he left, someone walking in held the door for him. It was a man in his 30s, wearing work boots and a hoodie. "Thanks," Damian said. The man gave him a nod. "Your mom's the one who owns this place, right?" "Yeah. I heard what happened here a few weeks back," the man said. "Taught me something, to be honest. Appreciate it." Damian didn't know what to say. He gave a small smile and a quiet, "Cool," then stepped onto the sidewalk. The sky was wide and bright above him. His walk home was slower this time, not because he was tired, but because he didn't feel rushed. Nothing to run from, nothing to prove. At a red light, he pulled out his phone and started typing. Just a few notes. Things he wanted to say at that upcoming workshop. Not for anyone else's approval, but because he knew what it felt like to stand there, watched and judged. And he knew what it meant to stand tall anyway. When he got home, Monica was at the kitchen counter, headphones in, laptop open, typing furiously. He placed the binder next to her and sat down without a word. She looked up, pulled out one earbud. "Everything good?" "Yeah," he said. "Real good." She studied him for a second, then nodded slowly. He stood up, grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl, and headed for the stairs. "Oh," he added, turning back. "I saw that flyer." Monica looked at him innocently. "Which one?" "You know which one." "You're going to do great." He laughed and shook his head. "We'll see." She didn't respond, just went back to her typing, the quiet click of the keys filling the space. And as he climbed the stairs, Damian didn't feel like the same boy who'd walked into that bank with dusty sneakers and a folder in his hand. He felt like someone who knew who he was, and didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. Because sometimes the loudest message is the one spoken with dignity. Thanks for listening to Damian's story. If this moved you in any way, take a second to subscribe, share it with someone, and leave a comment. Stories like this remind us what respect really looks like and how much it matters.